Prison in itself seems crazy scary. Living super long prison sentences in notorious prison facilities seem even more jarring. We know the prison sentences served can be very long and torturous, often non-bailable or sometimes above parole. We all feel the people who commit horrific crimes should be granted long and bad prison sentences. But how long is the question? And some prisons are insane. For example, the USP Florence AD Max prison in Colorado is rumoured to be one of the worst prisons in America. Some serve lifetime sentences. Some walk out in another generation, feeling lost at all the technological advances. Some lose their memory and fuzz out after their prison sentences are served. Which story is the craziest? Let's go through the top 10 most insane prison sentences ever given. Number 10. Jose Luis Gonzalez of Mexico. Let's start off with something mild. This businessman was sentenced to imprisonment for repeated fraud and scams where he ruined the lives of many Mexicans. He got 2,035 years of a life sentence, and it was the longest ever that was granted in Mexico. How many lifetimes do you think that constitutes? Number 9. Michael J. Devlin of USA. This guy is an American who was convicted for kidnapping and child sexual abuse, and right now is serving a whopping 71 life sentences in Missouri. He was charged with kidnapping 13-year-old Ben Ownby and 11-year-old Sean Hornbeck. He kidnapped them in a white pickup truck, and Sean was forced to pose as his son for 4 years. There was, however, 71 felony charges against him for kidnapping and forcible sodomy. He was also discovered to have dabbled in child pornography, and all of it linked back to Sean. In prison, however, he was stabbed and assaulted so much that the authorities considered letting him go with a new identity, but that caused the family members of the victims to get chagrined, and it wasn't done. He is still serving his 74 life sentences, which amount to 2,020 years in Missouri. Number 8. Jamal Zugum of Spain. There were 6 people implicated in the 2004 Madrid train bombings, and one of them was Jamal Zugum. His charges were multiple counts of murder, attempted murder, stealing vehicles, and conspiring as a terrorist. 3 eyewitnesses saw him drop a sack of something on one of the trains that were bombed. The bombs of the Madrid train bombings were detonated by mobile phones, and he owned a mobile phone shop, so the phone origin was traced to him, and he was allegedly even helped make the bomb. He was one of the first to get arrested for 191 murders, and was granted a sentence of 49,222 years in solitary confinement. His accomplice, Emilio Suarez Trachoras, was sentenced to 34,715 years for supplying dynamite in barter for drugs and assisted the bombing. Why this was a crazy sentence was that under Spanish law, normally the maximum that could be served is 40 years, but this was the longest legal sentence ever granted in the history of the European Union. Number 7. Abdullah Barghouti of Israel. This Israeli was the commander of Hamas's Al-Qassam brigades and was proved to participate in the bomb-making processes. He was considered Hamas's chief engineer and built many weapons and bombs for terrorism. He directly took part in the Sbarro restaurant suicide bombing, the double suicide bombing in a pedestrian mall, and 5 other huge bombings in Israel. He was responsible for 66 Israelis' deaths and 500 odd injuries. He was only arrested in 2003 and was granted 67 life terms along with 5,200 years in prison, which was the longest in Israel's history. He is not allowed even family visits and is jailed in solitary confinement. During a prisoner exchange, Israel refused to give this guy up. It was one of the longest life sentences officially sanctioned outside of the US. Number 6. Gary Leon Ridgway of USA. This guy is shudder-worthy and was called the Green River Killer. He had murdered many teenage girls and women between the 1980s and 1990s. He was the second most notorious serial killer in US history and was sentenced due to 48 murders made at separate times. He targeted sex workers and underage girls who ran away from their homes or other places, and his signature move was to strangle them and showed strong instances of necrophilia even. Added to the life sentences, he even got 480 years for the additional felonies he committed. Number 5. Ariel Castro of USA. This was a case of a kidnapper who kidnapped 3 women, Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina De Jesus, and held them captive in his home for 11 years from roughly 2002 to 2013. He was charged with kidnapping and rape that took 937 counts of it, and even aggravated and attempted murder. He used to treat those 3 women like animals and tortured them for the entirety of 10 years. During the court hearing, however, he maintained they had harmony at home and everything was consensual. He got life imprisonment and 1,000 years in prison without parole. He committed suicide in jail using bedsheets. Number 4. Martin Bryant of USA. This guy was diagnosed with a lot of psychological disorders and was often termed lonely by his neighbours and associates. He still didn't know what made him kill 35 people at Port Arthur, Australia, which is one of the world's deadliest shootouts. He started with killing the owners of a guest house called Seascape, which was rumoured to be the reason why his family faced a lot of hardship. He sat at a cafe in Port Arthur, finished eating, set up a video camera, whipped out a semi-automatic rifle and began shooting everyone at sight. He shot 17 times in 15 seconds and wounded 10 people. After this, he fired 12 more times and drove away. As he drove, he kept on shooting and was later captured and put in a suicide prevention cell for mental prisoners and was charged with life imprisonment and 1,652 years additionally for wounding, theft and arson. In 2020, he is imprisoned in a maximum security prison in Hobart. Number 3. Brenton Tarrant of the Christchurch mosque shooting in New Zealand. Brenton Tarrant was a member of a South Otago gun club where he practiced shooting and his neighbours often described him as a loner. He abused steroids and once visited the hospital for some thigh and eye injuries he sustained during shooting practice. The doctors did not look much into it, which in hindsight was the worst idea ever, as their complaint would have stripped Tarrant of his guns. He planned the shooting so meticulously that he told his mother shortly before the attack that she was going to read terrible things about him soon. Tarrant was thought to have attended prayer meetings regularly and inquired about the timings to make sure his plans went right, but this wasn't proved. Some said he followed the online tour and learned about the place. Some even claim he flew a drone around the building to view the place and learn when would be the busiest time for the mosque to open fire. He was sentenced to 52 life sentences with an additional 480 years without parole for each murder and injury of 40 people. 2. Terry Nichols of USA. Terry Nichols is given the term terrorist after his involvement in the Oklahoma City bombing along with Timothy McVeigh. Their target was the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, and it was bombed by a truck bombing. This happened in 1995 and claimed the lives of 168 people. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole because of the deaths he caused. Apart from that, he was convicted because of the use of a weapon of mass destruction and 8 counts of the manslaughter of federal law enforcement agents. His main charges against him were 161 counts of first-degree murder, including one of fetal homicide and first-degree arson. It technically led to 9,300 years without parole in the ADX Florence, and shares a cell block called Bombers Row with other notorious bombers. This created a record for the most consecutive life sentences given to a single individual, and was the longest officially sanctioned sentence in the world. Number 1. Chamoy Thipfezo of Thailand. Money frauds are kind of daunting, yet hilarious at the same time. One person even got the world's longest sentence for that. It is held by Chamoy Thipfezo for scamming more than 16,000 Thai people in a pyramid scheme worth approximately $250 million in 1989. She got 141,078 years of imprisonment, but was let go after 8, as there was a law that stated that he couldn't spend more than 20 years in jail because of fraud. Long story short, she started a pyramid scheme called the May Chamel Fund, which was constructed like an oil share, and she used her connections with the Air Force and Petroleum Authority to make it authentic looking. Around 16,000 people fell for it, and so did the military personnel and even the royal family. This must have been one smart woman who manipulated all these people so easily. That was all the scary stories for now. If you like this video, do be sure to give it a thumbs up. For more such content, subscribe to our channel. Also, hit the bell icon to turn on notifications for our channel. That's all from us for now. We'll see you in the next video.